Imagine a vast wilderness, icy mountains stretching into the clouds, endless forests untouched by human hands, and rivers teeming with salmon. Now imagine that this land, which would one day become one of the most resource-rich regions of the world, was once sold for just over $7 million. Yes, this is the story of Alaska, a land Russia once called its own, and a land the United States bought, in what many critics at the time mocked as Seward's Folly. But behind this transaction lies a tale of empire, desperation, strategy, and vision. So today, we journey back to uncover why did Russia sell Alaska to the United States? And why did America take a gamble on what many thought was a useless piece of frozen tundra? To understand why Russia gave up Alaska, we need to first understand how Russia got it in the first place. During the mid-18th century, Russian explorers sailed across the Bering Strait, led by men like Vitus Bering. They claimed vast territories in Alaska and set up trading outposts. For Russia, Alaska was not about settlement. It was about the fur trade. The sea otter, with its incredibly valuable pelts, became the foundation of Russia's North American presence. Russian hunters, known as Promyshlenniki, along with the Russian-American Company, built small settlements across the Alaskan coast. For a time, the profits were staggering. But there was a problem. Alaska was far away. Too far. The nearest Russian city, Irkutsk in Siberia, was thousands of miles away across harsh terrain. Supplying outposts was a nightmare, and the Russian settlers were few in number. Unlike Britain's colonization of North America, Russia never sent waves of farmers and townsfolk. Instead, they sent traders and hunters, which meant Russia's hold on Alaska was always fragile. By the early 19th century, cracks began to appear. The fur trade that had once made Alaska so profitable began to decline. Sea otters, hunted relentlessly, were on the brink of extinction. Profits plummeted. Maintaining settlements became costly, and food shortages were common. But Alaska's troubles weren't just economic, they were geopolitical. Russia's empire stretched across Europe and Asia. It had interests in the Black Sea, in the Caucasus, and ambitions in Central Asia. Compared to those regions, Alaska was remote, underpopulated, and vulnerable. And there was another looming threat. Britain. Canada was right next door. Britain's Hudson's Bay Company was powerful and aggressive in the fur trade. Russia knew that if war ever broke out, Britain could easily seize Alaska. The Crimean War of the 1850s made this danger crystal clear. Russia's navy was no match for Britain's in the Pacific. By the 1850s, Russian leaders began asking themselves, was Alaska worth the trouble? The answer, increasingly, was no. Instead of clinging to this vulnerable colony, Russia's rulers began to consider selling it. But to whom? Britain was out of the question. The Russian Empire had no intention of strengthening its main rival by handing them Alaska. That left one logical buyer, the United States. For Russia, America was a young, growing nation that could serve as a counterbalance to Britain. And America, fresh from its civil war, was beginning to flex its muscles as a rising power. In the 1860s, negotiations quietly began. Tsar Alexander II authorized the sale. The Russian ambassador to Washington, Edouard de Stoeckel, became the key negotiator. On the American side, Secretary of State William H. Seward was eager. Seward was a man of vision. He believed in America's expansion across the continent and beyond. Many mocked his dream of an empire of liberty stretching across the Pacific. But Seward was undeterred. In March 1867, the deal was struck. The price, $7.2 million. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $140 million today. A bargain for a territory twice the size of Texas. On March 30th, the treaty was signed. The U.S. Senate ratified it quickly. And on October 18th, 1867, the American flag was raised in Sitka, Alaska's capital at the time. Russia's North American adventure had come to an end. But not everyone was impressed. Many Americans ridiculed the purchase. Newspapers called it Seward's icebox or Seward's Folly. Critics sneered that the United States had paid millions for a useless wasteland of ice and polar bears. For decades, Alaska seemed to justify the mockery. It was sparsely populated, with few roads and little economic activity. The United States government treated it as little, more than a distant military outpost. But then, the true value of Alaska began to reveal itself. In 1896, gold was discovered in the Klondike, just across the border in Canada. The Alaskan towns of Skagway and Dye became gateways to the gold rush. Suddenly, Alaska mattered. Then came fish, timber, and later oil. In the 20th century, Alaska's petroleum reserves became some of the largest in the United States. What was once mocked as a frozen wasteland turned out to be a treasure chest. Looking back, Seward's gamble was genius. For just 2 cents an acre, the United States acquired a territory that would become vital for its resources, military strategy, and position in the Arctic and Pacific. So why, in the end, did Russia sell Alaska? The reasons are layered. the collapse of the fur trade, the crippling cost of maintaining distant settlements, the vulnerability of Alaska to Britain's empire, and the strategic decision to strengthen ties with the United States. For Russia, Alaska was more liability than asset. For America, it was a bold investment in the future. History often hides its ironies. Russia gave up Alaska, thinking it was worthless. America bought it, thinking it was risky. And yet, it turned out to be one of the most valuable land deals in history. Today, Alaska stands as a symbol of foresight, of risk, and of the shifting tides of empires. A reminder that sometimes, what looks like folly is actually brilliance. This was the story of why Russia sold Alaska to the United States. A tale of empire, strategy, and vision. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history's turning points, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Renaissance Reframed, where history is not just remembered, but reimagined